Okay, greetings everyone. Welcome to the third truck regulation implementation group meeting that focuses on infrastructure. My name is Leslie Goodbody and I'm leading this effort. Why don't we start the slideshow, Isaac, just so that we can get right to it, because we certainly have a lot to cover today. Today's meeting is going to be focused on funding and financing for infrastructure, the emphasis on infrastructure for trucks and funding that is either available or on the horizon. First, I'm going to do a little bit of a recap. Next slide. So at the last two infrastructure work group meetings, we've had two already. The first one, we established priorities, and those are topics for future infrastructure TRIG meetings. In the second TRIG meeting, we talked about we included the TRIG for the rules provision, and we talked really specifically about the infrastructure delay extension provision in the Advanced Clean Fleets rule. And we also had a lot of utilities present different information on their transportation electrification programs. And then so this meeting, we're going to be talking about funding, but we're funding and financing for this type of thing. So I wanted to go, before we even get into the funding and financing presentations, I want to put my dear colleague from the Energy Commission on the spot, Christy Villarreal. Maybe you could turn on your camera. And Isaac, stop sharing screen. And then Christy, your turn to share screen. So Christy is from the California Energy Commission, and she is,
hold on.
Sorry. Yeah, there we go. She's from the California Energy Commission. She's an air pollution specialist, and she's going to give us a quick demonstration of CEC's medium and heavy duty station development dashboard, the beta version. So I'm going to let Christy take it away from here.
Thanks, Leslie. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone's staying cool. Thanks for listening to this brief overview of a medium and heavy duty ZEV station infrastructure map and dashboard that we recently released as a beta version, pending a more broader release in probably about a month or two. Basically, the intent of the dashboard is to show the build out throughout California of infrastructure. The map shows the public infrastructure. I'm going to access the tool now that we're aware of that has received funding from various agencies. So just as a quick overview, the orange squares are charging projects, green are hydrogen, purple include both technologies. The map also has layers that you can highlight, seaports, major highways, actually the IOU and POU districts overlay. So kind of a lot of cool stuff to check out there. And it really does show the infrastructure build out. So in using this tool, I wanted to kind of point out a couple of things. One is that anytime that you need to get a little more information about terminology, instructions on how to use the tool, that is possible by just clicking this little eye icon here. And I want to show you, for example, choose any project, I suppose, but I'll choose this charging project here. What you do is you click on it, and you'll see the address of the station, the funding agency or agencies, the number of chargers, it would be dispensers for hydrogen, and the number of ports. Now, future release of the dashboard, we anticipate, including more details, more fields. But as I think we all know, a lot of these projects are very very new, and sometimes the locations change, or sometimes the number of dispensers and chargers may change too. This is the NorCal Zero project that recently there was a ribbon cutting, but it has one dispenser, as far as I know, I think, for for heavy duty refueling, and 2 different nozzles. I think they're at 2 different bar settings. It also has 2 light duty dispensers as well. So, and then up here, it shows, this provides an estimated number of how many refueling positions there are that are either award or under development, and a few of them are actually operating. And it calls out the public versus the private, and the private includes transit. Now, the way we collected this data was through an interagency collaboration, but also we to get private depot information, unless it was publicly announced, we went to the CPUC and provided addresses that we had, and they kind of pulled out the ones that were duplicative, and we didn't get addresses, but we got statistics on that helped us compile this data up at the top here. And again, this is a beta version, so we're looking for input. There's an email address that you can click on. Let's see if I can get there. Yes, if you have input, suggestions, if you know of projects that are not on the dashboard that should be, please do submit them to us. And we want to make this a really, good, useful dashboard. And yeah, we're planning to update it probably every 2 months. And this is kind of the family of other dashboards that the CEC has as well. So thank you. I hope that provided a quick overview of what we have, and the link is available as well. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I think our intent is to save questions to the end, because we have a number of presentations coming up, and I do want to make some clarifying points while Isaac is bringing the other presentation back up to the stage. A few things. We will be posting the video, of course, of this meeting onto the meetings and events calendar. Yeah, and hold this slide up. We also will be posting the presentations themselves with active links throughout. So anytime you see a link in any of these presentations, you'll have access to that. And if possible, maybe we'll have someone Isaac on my team open the link to that beta version, that website that you just sent out, and we're going to put that in the Q&A, or hopefully in a response to the chat, so that people can see it right away. But just to reiterate, Christy, you're looking for input on this, right? And and you want that input to come to you directly?
Yes, that email address. Sorry, I was muted. I was trying to send the link, but I see that someone else did. But yes,
we got it. We got it.
Yeah, we're definitely looking for input. Again, if you want to share it with developers or other agencies, and you have suggestions. I see some in the chat. It's great. We have received a lot of good suggestions that are hopefully feasible that we could incorporate. And yeah, so thanks.
So, yeah. Perfect. So we'll make sure we share those suggestions with you after the meeting, so you have everything that's coming in today. And otherwise, folks, reach out to Chrissy directly through her email. We're gonna move on. So maybe move to the next slide, Isaac. Thank you. We're gonna now be giving a very large number of presentations that cover federal, state, and local funding and financing programs for medium duty and heavy duty zero emission vehicle infrastructure. So I've asked our presenters to focus on applicability, eligibility, timing, opportunities for stacking and co-funding, and really just sort of cut to the chase with these programs. Again, all of these presentations will be posted with active links. So I just want to reassure everyone who's on the call now, and that will be through the same avenue where people received the notice for this workshop through our ZEV Fleet meeting and events calendar for the ACF rulemaking. So without further ado, I would like to introduce and move on to our first presenter, Brian Rand. Next slide, please. Brian Rand is going to be covering the CalFleet Advisor. And so take it away, Brian.
Thanks, Leslie. So my name is Brian, and I'm the program manager for CalFleet Advisor. I'll try and keep this very short because I know we have a lot of folks to get through. Just want to introduce the CalFleet Advisor program to those who might not be familiar with it. It is a free technical assistance program for medium and heavy-duty fleets moving to zero-emission vehicles in California. We help both the public and the private sector, and we currently have fleets enrolled all the way from 0 trucks up to 52,000 trucks. We provide a personal advisory service, almost a concierge-like service, to help you overcome the obstacles that you find as you're moving to zero-emission vehicles. We can help with finding new vehicles, finding infrastructure, working on incentives, and all the things that you need to get done in order to make this switch successful. And one of the biggest things we do is help find your incentives, whether that's on the infrastructure or the truck side. We are happy to help with any one-off quick questions you have. And for more information, I'd recommend that you can go to that QR code on the screen. You can give our phone line or email a call is the best, but the best way to get started with us is to go to calfleetadvisor.org. There's a quick form to fill out, and an advisor will be with you within a day or two.
And like I think, not sure I mentioned this, but we're going to be saving all of the clarifying questions from all of the presentations you're seeing till after we're done with all of the presentations. So let's go to the next slide, and I want to introduce to you Tessie Bravo. She is the Deputy Director of CalStart's Energize program. Take it away, Tessie, are you here?
I am here. Thank you, Leslie. So I'll go ahead and get us started. My name is Tessie Bravo. I am the Deputy Director for the Energize program. The Energize program funds ZEV charging and refueling infrastructure. It can be hydrogen or it can be electric. And it always must support the deployment of infrastructure for medium duty, heavy duty commercial fleets. For Energize purposes, that is class 2B through 8. Next slide, please. And so this is a quick overview of what our content will look like. I won't spend too much time here because we have a lot of presentations. This will also be posted. So next slide, please. And let's go ahead and get into a little more depth about Energize. So Energize is funded by the California Energy Commission. We were awarded a block grant through CalSTART to start the Energize funding. Energize provides reimbursement style funding, so we must incur costs before we're able to get reimbursement. We do have a midpoint check, so once you actually break ground and start construction, that is a good milestone where you may apply for payment. And again, it must be infrastructure that supports medium duty, heavy duty commercial fleets, can be electric or can be hydrogen. Next slide, please. Our current lane that's open is our drayage lane. So our drayage lane is intended to support drayage vehicles. It's also intended to support and care the vehicles from HVIP's CARB's HVIP voucher, the vehicle voucher program, which is a cash on the hood program, to infrastructure directly. So for vehicles you get through the drayage HVIP selection, you will also get infrastructure through Energize. Again, maybe EV or maybe hydrogen. It can be private, public, or shared. We don't care what type of site you're setting up, but it must always be in support of medium duty, heavy duty commercial fleets. For drayage, that's most likely going to be the heavy duty. We have our EV Jumpstart lane that'll be opening July 10th as well. If you want more information, I'll have some slides and a contact info you can reach out to me for that. Next slide, please. And a little more about Energize and our successes that we've had. So we launched Energize, again, California Energy Commission funded block grant in February of 2022. We have roughly 2,000 chargers or dispensers in our queue, in electric or hydrogen. And we also have awarded projects summing over 100 million. So we award projects pretty about quarterly. And so we've awarded over 100 million at this time. We've also processed over 350 applications. Some items that are really important to me as I take over this program are making sure we maintain high user friendliness. We want to make things as simple as possible. You may also reach out to Brian Rand, who is my colleague, and he can help you through the process as well for all funding and stacking funding. And if we zoom out, so we have some lanes that are oversubscribed, and so there tends to be a little bit of an element of scarcity sometimes, but if we actually zoom out and look at all of our energized lanes, we have about 65% of applicants are awarded, which is a pretty good number. So if you take some time, spend the time to apply, you do have a pretty good chance of getting awarded. And we are also stackable on Energize. So some of the programs that you'll be hearing about after me, things like Carl Moyer, utility programs like Charge Ready Transport, any local government agency programs, we are stackable with all of those programs, and we can help you apply to both of those. And again, Brian Rand from CalFleet Advisors can also lend a hand. Next slide, please. So what does Energize cover? Energize covers 4 major categories: hardware, software, maintenance, and warranty. The items we primarily see are around hardware and software. So the chargers themselves, things like cabling, conduit, breakers, all of those panels, those are part of utility upgrades that are also covered through Energize. Switchgear, transformers, any kind of panels or hardware that actually goes to getting the project to ground. And then software, any of the fleet or demand management software, any networking costs, or anything for remote monitoring. Maintenance and warranty are one-time costs and more like the plans that we cover. So those are the items that Energize covers as eligible costs. Again, hardware, software, maintenance, or warranty. Next slide, please. And how much money is available is probably the next question. So it really depends on the type of project you have. If you have an EV project, it may be level 2 or DC. Again, can be public, private, or shared for most of these lanes. For EV projects, we have an initial project cap of $500,000. You can bump up to the max award if you meet equity criteria. Most of our equity criteria is going to be based on locations. Location-based equity criteria initially is how this project was set up. And that will bump you up to 750,000 if you have an EV project. If you have a hydrogen project, we started a project cap of 3 million. These same items are available for eligible costs, right? Hardware, software, maintenance, warranty. If you meet that same equity criteria, largely location-based, then you get that bump up in hydrogen to 4 million. And we also allow for mixed fuel sites. That means you have EV and hydrogen on site. This is a good place for the drayage lane to squeeze in because you may support either hydrogen or electric fueled vehicles. And we start at 750,000 and the max award bump up to 1 million if you happen to meet the equity criteria. Next slide, please. So to find out if you're eligible to apply for the drayage funding lane, you may scan this barcode and you need to have a valid IRS issued TIN. You also need to make sure that that TIN is in good standing with the Secretary of State. If it's required to register with the Secretary of State, you need to have a project, again, supporting the deployment of ZEV infrastructure, maybe hydrogen or electric. And the site itself may be public, private, or shared. So you may scan that barcode and that'll see if you're eligible for drayage. If drayage happens to not be a good fit for you, again, we'll match you to the right lane. Just get in contact with us and we're happy to lend a hand. Next slide, please. And this would be how you get in contact with me. So if you have any additional questions, or again, if drayage isn't a good lane for you, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to pair you to the correct lane. And that is all I have, Leslie. So if you want to go ahead and take it back here so you can pass it along, I'm happy to hand it over. I believe you're on mute, Leslie.
You'd think I'd have this by now. You could advance to, I think, the next slide. I would like to bring up Jimmy O'Day from CalStar. Caltrans. Yeah, and this is the subject he's going to be talking about, various subjects. Doesn't have a presentation, but boy, he has a lot of information to cover. Are you able to get on, Jimmy?
Yeah, good to see you, Leslie. I'm here, and good to see everybody else. Yeah, so Jimmy O'Day, I am at Caltrans, California Department of Transportation. And like Leslie said, we have a great list of programs that these slides will be sent out with all of these links for opportunities that exist. So I'm just going to run through the list that we see here. The first is the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program. This is a key program in the federal bipartisan infrastructure law. Every state gets a formula amount of funding to build out charging infrastructure along designated corridors, the major highway corridors across the country. Requirements that there's charging stations every 50 miles, no further than 1 mile from these corridors. In California, we just this week announced the first round of proposed awards under this program, $38 million for charging projects along a handful of corridors across the state. We're expecting a second solicitation, much larger, for about $110 million in the early fall timeframe. The first and second solicitations have primarily been focused on the light duty market. Charging projects for trucks are eligible. You could have, a truck plaza that has, chargers for both light duty and heavy duty vehicles. Once we build out the network of 50-mile, stations every 50 miles, we have proposed, and we just have announced this at a workshop a month or so ago, that the intention of this program that Caltrans is collaborating with the California Energy Commission on, I should have said that up front, that we intend to shift our focus to medium and heavy duty vehicles. We expect to have over $200 million remaining in this pot of funding once we build out this initial corridors for the light duty market. If this is something you all agree with or maybe disagree with, we encourage you to submit a comment to the docket that is linked on the slide, just saying, that, your thoughts on that matter. We're really excited about the opportunity to use this large pot of federal funds to support trucks across the state. The second program I want to highlight is another federal program also funded under bipartisan infrastructure law, the Charging and Fueling Infrastructure Discretionary Grant Program. So this is a competitive federal program. Eligible applicants in this program are state, local, tribal governments. So if you're a EV charging provider or hydrogen provider out there that's interested in this program, talk to a local agency, a port, a tribal government about an idea that you might have for an application. At the state level, we are also focusing on a medium and heavy duty application. This program just opened the second round just last week, so the timing for this TRIG meeting is very timely. Applications are due for it at the end of August, so find those partnerships soon. But at the state level, I want to share with you all that we are planning to submit an application to support truck charging across the entire West Coast with Oregon and Washington along the I-5 corridor. Some of you may have known this is an idea that we submitted to the same program last year. We didn't get funded, unfortunately, so we're going back at it again this year. I think we have a really good proposal at hand, and more funding is available in this second round, $1.3 billion available nationally. California did quite well in the first round of the CFI program last year. 10 projects were awarded. 4 of those were to support medium and heavy duty vehicles. So the CFI program is just a really excellent source of federal funding that we're trying to bring as much of that to California. And again, Caltrans's work on the CFI is also with the California Energy Commission, who've just been such great partners with us. The last program I want to highlight is the Trade Corridors Enhancement Program, also known as TCEP. And this is a state program administered by the California Transportation Commission. But Caltrans, we're a very interested party in this program. We have an allocation of 40% of TCEP funding through statute goes to Caltrans nominated projects. The other 60% goes to projects nominated from local transportation agencies. At Caltrans, we're in the process of determining how we want to proceed for this next round of TSTEP funding, which we expect to open in August and close in November, that the CTC is going to open up. And we're developing an approach for supporting medium and heavy duty charging projects and hydrogen projects through the Caltrans portion of these funds. So stay tuned. I can't share anything more about that program yet, but also if you're a EV charging provider or hydrogen company out there, I encourage you to talk to a local agency of the MPOs who also have the eligibility to seek these TSTEP funds. That was a lot. All these links really say more. Just if you have one takeaway message, know that at Caltrans, we're really engaged on supporting medium and heavy duty truck charging and hydrogen. I'm the point of contact for this work. Feel free to contact me, sign up for our updates at the last link below. Back to
So,
you, Leslie.
thank you. I think what we should do is maybe add, if you could, Jimmy, add your your email, if you don't mind,
Absolutely.
into the chat for everyone to see if you're okay with.
I was going to ask you, was I allowed to say I knew ahead of time or not? Because I would try to pretend I didn't, but like I'm a bad liar.
No,
so.
I can't.
Jacob, you're not muted, but I was going to have you come on and give your presentation anyway. So, Isaac, can we move to the next slide? Okay, now you get to unmute and talk.
Good afternoon, everyone. Ben Gould here from the Department of Energy. We'll be talking a little bit about federal funding today. Just full disclosure, everything in this presentation is public knowledge and there's no new content. Also, I cannot speak for the EPA, but I will tell you the best I know about their programs. I'm also be covering some really dense slides. I'm just going to be going over the wave tops, and you can study them later in in your leisure. Next slide. At the Department of Energy, in my office, I work in the Hydrogen Fuel Cell Technology Office. We do about $377 million of development, research, and R&D funds directed at hydrogen. So all of our FOs are closed at this moment, but it comes around every year. So if there are interesting projects you could look for in the next coming cycle. Next slide. At the DOE, we have a whole of government approach towards hydrogen infrastructure and zero emission technologies. Next slide. This is highlighted in what we call the Hydrogen Interagency Task Force. So really it's a collaboration between 12 different agencies. And so today I'll be talking a little bit about one of EPA's programs. Just to let you know, as the federal government, we're trying to work across all the agencies. I think there's an animated next slide or an animated feature. So the landing spot for that is hydrogen.gov. So you can see a working group understanding that whole thing. All right, so let's launch into the opportunity that's closing in about 6 weeks. There's the Clean Heavy Duty Vehicles Program Grant. This is about $1 billion to look at, upgrading old diesels to new zero emission vehicles. The deadline is July 25th. So be sure to have your applications in then before midnight Eastern Standard Time. Next slide. So, there's various different eligibilities for these vehicles. I think the important bit is it is a vehicle program, but also infrastructure is allowed under this program. The infrastructure has to be behind the meter. So, you can build charging pedestals or hydrogen dispensing systems, but you can't build pipelines, you can't build substations. And it's specifically targeted at Class 6, Class 7 vehicles. Next slide. Within those vehicle classes, there's really two bifurcations in this program. There's a program focused on school buses, and there's a program focused on vocational vehicles. The list of the type of vocational vehicles is there. Next slide. So the grant structure, is sort of split 70% to the school buses and 30% to the vocational buses. In terms of fleets, there's sort of a minimum requirement of at least 10 buses per applicant and 3 vehicles per vocational vehicle program. Next slide. To be eligible, you basically must be able to scrap an older or existing vehicle of a diesel vehicle of engine year model 2010 and then replace it with a new zero emission vehicle. If you don't have a engine year model 10 older diesel vehicle, you have some other options you can look at. You can that are diesel or non-diesel ICE vehicles, or you can move them to reduced fleet service in your fleet. So think if you have a bus fleet, you may have some few spare buses in the barn in case one breaks. You can basically move one of the diesel vehicles to that spare vehicle and then upgrade it with a zero emission vehicle. Next slide. All the zero emission vehicles must meet the federal regulations. They have to be class 6 and class 7, and they have to abide by BABA. Next slide. Finally, these are the best resources to look at if you're really interested in this program. I encourage you first to start with the program webinar. It's a great resource of about 30 minutes going over all the details of the presentation I just hit the wave tops of. There's a new Q&A document that was just published on this program a few days ago. The link is there. It's a great resource to look at. Also, the Joint Office from the Department of Energy is providing free technical assistance to this grant program for interested applicants. The email address is there to contact them. And finally, if you have any questions on the program, you must submit them by July 8th, but there's the address to ask any questions of this program about. So those are all the great resources. And with that, turn it over to the next speaker.
Thank you so much, Ben. So our next speaker is Robert Sauls-Marneau. He's a program analyst at the California Pollution Control Financing Authority, and he's going to talk about California Capital Access Program, or CalCAP.
Hello, thank you for the introduction. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. So California Pollution Control Financing Authority is housed in the State Treasurer's Office. CPCFA is a financing authority. We have programs that support and incentivize private capital investment in service of various state and federal policy goals. Next slide, please. The California Capital Access Program was originally established in 1994. It's commonly known as CalCAP. CalCAP offers credit enhancements to lenders that make targeted loans towards specific, based on our loan programs, they're to specific types of loans. So for businesses, the credit enhancements are seen as incentives to incentivize lenders to make these type of loans, while for the lenders, the credit enhancements are risk management tools that are available to them to help increase their portfolio. CalCAP operates multiple variations of the credit enhancements. Each of them are their own CalCAP program. We have so many different programs. With the new 3, we're up to 7 now because of our statutory ability to work with independent contributors. Independent contributors are entities which identify state or federal policy goals, which can be supported by credit enhancement programs for loans through private capital. Next slide, please. So previously, we worked with California Air Resources Board. We had the very successful CalCAP CARB truck loan program running from 2009 to 2023, supporting the big picture policy of reducing diesel emissions. Now we have 3 new programs coming. The first one is from California Air Resources Board, initially allocated $5 million for medium and heavy duty zero emission vehicles. We have a new program through the California Energy Commission, $5 million for medium and heavy duty zero emission infrastructure. And lastly, we have $20 million coming from Southern California Edison for medium and heavy duty zero emission trucks, buses, and the related charging infrastructure. These new pilot programs are going to be supporting medium duty, heavy duty vehicles, and specifically their charging infrastructure. Next slide, please. So the credit enhancement mechanism that we use, it's a loan loss reserve mechanism. So the way that it works is that lenders enroll loans into our programs. The loans need to qualify based on the specifics of the program, but a key design feature of the program is that each loan that they enroll is going to have us put down a contribution based on the total amount of the loan. So the program is most effective when a lender enrolls multiple loans into the program. The company where we set up an account for that lender, and as those contributions build up, they're able to pull on those combined contributions to be able to pay off up to 100% of a qualified claim. Next slide, please. So the shared features of the 3 programs, the contributions that we pay down for each of the loans is 25% of the loan. And there's no type of fees or contribution from the borrower or the lender. That's just 25% coverage coming from us. There is the requirement that the loans can't have an interest rate higher than 20% that benefits the borrower. The loans can include warranties or maintenance plans when they're purchased with the vehicles or charging equipment. Next slide, please. So first, the CARB Zero Emission Heavy Duty Vehicle Program. The vehicle requirements are specifically zero emission powertrains, so that can be hydrogen refueling, electric, other zero emission technology. The vehicles need to be medium or heavy duty. The way we define that is 8,500 pounds or greater gross vehicle weight rating. They can be new or used equipment. There is a limit to the maximum fleet size of borrowers that are for eligibility. 20 heavy duty vehicles is the maximum fleet size. Next slide, please. We have the California Energy Commission funded Zero Emission Heavy Duty Infrastructure Program. This one is going to be for new electric charging and or hydrogen fueling equipment. So this can be for the acquisition of supply equipment, electrical panels, grid improvements, if they're not paid for by a relevant electric utility, materials and supplies, including conduit and construction materials, required signage, hardware and software necessary for fully operational stations, the labor to install the charging stations, equipment warranties. We do again have a maximum for this program as well. 20 ports and or nozzles is the maximum that'll be allowed. Next slide, please. Lastly, we have the Southern California Edison Zero Emission Truck, Bus, and Infrastructure Program. So this one can be both for vehicles and for infrastructure. It can be either or. The requirements for this one are a little bit more stringent, though, in that the borrower needs to be an active Southern California Edison account holder. The borrowers also need to either use the vehicles or equipment in a disadvantaged community or rural community, or their business needs to be located in one of those communities. Again, the same definition as the previous one for how we define medium and heavy duty equipment is 8,500 pounds or greater, GVWR. And warranties can be included. Next slide, please. So for combining the programs, these financing programs can't be combined with each other, and we also can't combine them with other credit enhancement programs that may be offered through iBank, SBA, or other similar folks. But there's no requirements as far as layering these with grants or other incentives. So we highly recommend that borrowers work to get the costs down on the initial loan so that they can get better terms through these lenders participating in our programs. Next slide, please. So the financial institutions are already available there. We have an application available already on our website. At the final slide, I have a QR code available, but lenders are already able to start signing up for the program. The sequence is that they'll submit that the updated financial institution application to us, and then we schedule a training. We provide information for the lenders, and then we have this list available for borrowers. So thank you so much for your time.
And thank you so much, Robert. So that was a financing assistance program. Unlike the other programs, are sort of like a grant programs. And we have one more of those to talk about. I'm going to bring to the stage Dan Adler, and he is the Deputy Director for California Climate Finance. He's going to talk about the California Infrastructure and Economic Development Bank, or iBank.
Thank you, Leslie. Greetings, everybody. I'll be describing a new program that we're launching at the iBank. iBank is functioning along with our colleagues at the State Treasurer's Office as the state's green bank, really trying to round out our offerings and finance supportive of our policy agenda and layering in with all the good grant programs you've been hearing about. So this is a new initiative launching this summer following some capital infusions from the Inflation Reduction Act. Next slide, please. So just a few slides for me. This is the source of the funds so you understand what we're working with. The US EPA has a greenhouse gas reduction fund capitalizing now 8 different national nonprofit entities that in turn flow lending and credit support capital down to state green banks like ours. We are part of one of the awards, and as I said, we're working through the process with US EPA at the same time that we're building out our approach to market and getting feedback through an open RFI process that is, again, open to your feedback on a rolling basis, with the intent that we'll be in the market offering financial products later this summer in roughly the August timeframe. Next slide, please. The national program is open to a range of different technology sectors, the ones you see here. We have a responsibility to offer financing and financing support to these sectors. We can add other sectors as the state policy agenda suggests through an avenue of negotiation with US EPA. But there's obviously a heavy emphasis on zero emission transportation on this list that can cover a range of different products and technology types and financing resources and approaches, which I'll describe in my next slide, which is actually the main content of this presentation. So a few elements to highlight here. We're still working out the details, but we expect an award capital available to the Green Bank, ourselves and our colleagues in the Treasurer's Office, of approximately $750 million. That's across all three sectors. We don't have any hard and fast rules as to how much of that capital is available for transportation solutions versus the other elements of the climate agenda. So we are now beginning to test the market for appetite for the kinds of products that we're offering. I do want to stress that these are loans and credit support mechanisms. Think like loan guarantees of the sort you just heard about. They're not grants. We do need to revolve this money. And the theme there is the more we revolve it, the more velocity we get, the more impact we have. This is the beginnings of a permanent Green Bank lending facility for the state. So we do need to be good stewards of it so that it can grow and become more dynamic and all-inclusive over time. We're expecting to launch in the fourth quarter. We're actively developing our project pipeline now, even at the same time as we develop our approach to market through things like loan participations, expanded loan guarantees, incentives bridging, in certain cases, potentially working at the origination stage with the right partners. We're actively developing that project pipeline right now and would welcome intake for where we can find it. This is the email address to use if you're ready to get in touch with us about a specific financing. I will say that what we're providing is both supportive of project developers, folks who need these resources on the ground, but equally importantly, it's supportive of the private capital community. What we need to do over time, obviously, is take the pressure off of public budgets for this transition and figure out what it will take to get private capital to support this infrastructure agenda as soon as possible and at scale. So we're balancing those interests as we design our products. But the best way to hear about what will work will be from direct feedback from parties who are trying to finance and build assets at the moment. This will be available statewide. It'll be available on a rolling basis. We don't have periodic evaluation processes. We're not necessarily weighing one project against another. It's as long as the capital is available and the project is eligible and it hits our underwriting criteria, we can proceed. We do have a strong emphasis on what the Biden administration is calling Justice 40 investments, making sure that at least 40% of capital is deployed in or to the benefit of priority disadvantaged communities. We do also have to make sure we abide by categories such as Build America, Buy America, the Davis-Bacon issues of additionality, meaning we're not adding capital to a project that was already ready to proceed, and maximizing private leverage. A dollar in should equal multiples of private dollar alongside us. We're starting from a perspective of market-based terms so that we can, again, leverage as much private capital in alongside us, but we do have and will use all flexibility to fill gaps in a project's financing and contain costs. We know we need to make sure this comes in not just on a one-time basis, but can be replicated and therefore has the right cost profile for customers. We can support both vehicles and infrastructure across all deployment sizes. And again, a priority for us is extending the reach of private lenders so that we get maximum scale and impact from these dollars. Next and final slide is just some contact information. The best way we can do this work at this early stage as we get ready to launch later in the summer is through direct engagement with project proponents and their investors. So you can reach out to me personally at that email address or to our general climate financing address just beneath that. Thanks very much for the chance to be with you.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Dan. That was a fantastic presentation. I noticed someone has their hand up, and I just want to remind folks that we're going to have a good amount of time at the end, thank goodness, after everyone is done giving their presentations to ask clarifying questions from each one of the programs. So save your questions for the end of the presentations, for clarifying questions about everything you've just heard. Let's see, our next presenter is Jordan Ramalingam, and he's going to conclude our discussion of all of our state programs that are available statewide. He's the supervisor of the Low Carbon Fuel Standard Policy and Rulemaking team. He's going to give us an update on ZEV infrastructure crediting.
Great. Thanks for having me, Leslie. Good afternoon, everyone. For those that aren't familiar with the LCFS program, it's one of the state's main climate change. Oh, can you still hear me?
I can still hear you.
Okay. My Zoom is freezing on my end. I'm going to keep talking. Let me know
If it's freezing, turn your camera off. Thanks.
Am I back on? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. My Zoom just restarted. Okay, so starting over, if you're not familiar with the LCFS program, the main goal of the program, it's one of California's larger climate change mitigation programs. We focus on lowering the carbon intensity of transportation fuels in California. But one of the main things that the program does is we give credits in our credit market for dispensing electricity and hydrogen for zero emission trucks as well as light duty vehicles. On top of that, and the main thing I wanted to touch on today was we are adding a new provision that would give additional credits on top of the dispensed fuel credits for hydrogen refueling for heavy duty vehicles, for trucks and medium duty vehicles, as well as fast charging as well for those vehicles. And so we issued a proposal back in, it was late December, where we put out a proposal to add this new provision for medium heavy duty refueling infrastructure. The credits for this would be substantial. I encourage you to check out some of our reg documents to look at what we've been proposing here, but the basic idea is that you can get credits for dispensing hydrogen or electricity to these zero emission trucks. And you can get credits for the unused refueling capacity at your station. And so you're stacking those two together, it could be a substantial amount of support for some guaranteed crediting periods as well. We put out an initial proposal earlier in the year, as I mentioned. As part of the rulemaking process, we received a lot of comments on that proposal, and including on the infrastructure proposal itself. So we have committed to doing a 15-day change period, which is reg lingo for there's the formal process for adjusting the proposal that we put out earlier this year. And so I can't speak to specific changes that will be in that package, but I can say as part of that 15-day change package, we will be looking at the ZEV infrastructure eligibility provisions based on the comments that we received from probably a lot of you and from a lot of stakeholders, and as well as looking at provisions that would increase support for ZEV refueling in general. We'll be presenting this package to the board in early November 2024. I think November 8th is the specific board date, with an effective date in early 2025. That's a quick overview. Happy to take questions once we get to that point. Thanks, Leslie.
Thank you very much, Jordan. Okay, so now we're going to move on to funding that is not statewide, starting with our local programs. And we're going to start with the South Coast Air Quality Management District. I'm inviting Tom Lee to the stage. He's the Technology Implementation Manager at the South Coast AQMD. He's going to talk about infrastructure incentives within that air district. Tom?
Hi, thanks, Leslie. Hey, good afternoon. My name is Tom Lee. We currently at South Coast, we do not have an open program on infrastructure, but I will provide a quick overview and we'll talk about some upcoming opportunities. All right, next slide. Now, South Coast program is based on the Carl Moyer program guidelines, and we can fund, as you can see here, battery charging stations, hydrogen refueling stations, and also TRU chargers and plugs. We can fund new stations, and we can also fund expansions. That just means that if you have an existing working station and you're increasing capacity. Conversions can be funded also. Now that's if you, for example, in the diesel station, you want to convert it to charging or hydrogen refueling. All right, next slide. Some very basic requirements. Obviously, the equipment has to be installed in our air basin, which is essentially our 4 counties here. It has to comply with all Fed, state, local regulations. So we will need your city's building and safety and fire department to sign off on the project. The equipment has to be brand new. It cannot be used or remanufactured. And the work has to be done by a licensed contractor. Next slide, please. If you are applying for a charging station, it has to be minimal level 2 or higher. The chargers have to be certified by a national lab like Underwriters Laboratories. It has to have a minimum 1 year for parts and labor warranty. And this requirement also applies to the hydrogen refueling station. If it's electric charging, it has to be installed by an EVITP certified electrician. All right, next slide, please. This is sort of like the funding table that we speak of. Essentially, you will minimally get 50% of the project cost, and that can include the taxes. If it's a public access, we add 10% to that percentage, the final funding amount. If it has renewables such as solar panels or wind systems, we add an additional 15% to that final percentage. If this project is for a public school district, you're actually eligible for the full amount of your project cost. All right, next slide, please. This is basically a distribution of the project types that we awarded in the last 3 years. I did not include, because this is a ZEV, we funded in the last few years, natural gas stations is not here, only taken out the data from the ZE. 50% of all our awards were for charging for heavy duty on-road vehicles, about 30% for hydrogen refueling, also for on-road vehicles. And the rest of them, which is around 25%, 30%, they're distributed amongst TRU, plugs, yard trucks, and a couple on rail locomotives. All right, next slide, please. We just had the reason why we don't have an open solicitation right now is we just finished one a few months ago that ended in February. And right now we're still doing evaluations. If you have applied for that, we plan to go to the board in late summer to announce the awards. What's worth mentioning is that starting with this solicitation, oops, oh, sorry, I think I had a timer in there by mistake. You can go back, all right, thanks. Worth mentioning is we started funding some non-permanent infrastructure that can be deployed quickly while waiting for the permanent infrastructure to build out. Examples of these that we're funding are like linear generators that run on natural gas or some methanol fuel cell powered chargers. We plan to fund roughly 200 million of this ask here. The rest of them that we cannot fund yet will go on the backup list. And once we receive more funding or allocate more funding, somehow there are projects that fall through and we use that funding to fund more projects, then we'll pick up the projects in the backup list. All right, next slide, please. Just providing some links here. The first one is you can sign up for our listserv that will then email you when the new program opens up. The second one, if you want to read more about the Carl Moyer guidelines on both on-road infrastructure, that's the second link. And the last link is our grant management system where you sign up and apply. Now, our process is very forgiving. Most people don't know that. Sorry about that. Go back. Sorry. Yeah, sorry, Leslie, put the timer in there by mistake. We don't need you to provide all the information at the get-go when you submit. We provide you time, allow you time. After you submit, your application is typically assigned to a project officer. And then over like a 2-month period, then we can still collect information from you and you can still change your mind. It's unlike some of the EPA or other state grant proposals where you kind of have to get everything right and then they would judge you by that application. Ours is not like that. We will help you. Just put the basic information in there and we'll work with you to get all the needed information for your eligibility. All right, I think, next slide, please. And just providing staff information, you can contact any one of them. These are technical staff that can talk about your project, in technical details, and they can even give you an estimate of your award if there's enough information provided to them, so that you find out whether it's worth it or not to even apply. As you know, you guys know, the application process can be pretty labor intensive. So I think it's a courtesy to most that they know kind of the ballpark amount before they actually sit down and go through the application. So that concludes my presentation. I'll be at the end to answer questions.
Thank you, Tom. Super informative. Much appreciated. David Lopez is our next speaker. He's a supervisor in the Grants and Incentives Department of the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District. And so he's going to talk about their clean vehicle fueling infrastructure program.
Yeah, thanks, Leslie, and hi, everybody. My name is actually Jeff Writing. David Lopez unfortunately could not make it, but I will be happy to share the presentation. So again, yeah, I'm at the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District, and we're going to be talking about the Clean Vehicle Fueling Infrastructure Program. So next slide, please. And so a lot of this may sound familiar from the last presentation. Our program is based on the Carl Moyer guidelines. And so kind of a lot of what Tom was talking about, new stations, conversion of existing stations, and expansion of existing stations. Our projects are typically, they could be public entities, private entities, but it's geared more towards heavy duty. And they must be located within the boundaries of our district, which are the 8 counties within the San Joaquin Valley Air District, from San Joaquin County all the way down to the valley portion of Kern County. Next slide, please. Our project categories would be hydrogen fueling stations and battery charging stations. Chargers can be level 2 or level 3. They must be non-residential, and publicly accessible stations must use valid charging connector protocols. Probably end up seeing NACS in the updated version once the guidelines have been updated, as that is now the industry standard. Yeah, actually, next slide, please. And again, this is very similar to what you saw with South Coast, but this is kind of a standard for Moyer projects. You've got your baseline at 50%, and then you've got a plus up for publicly accessible projects of 10%. You got a plus up of 15% for public with solar and wind. And then again, for the combination of the two, and then you have 100% for school bus projects. Next slide, please. So typically you're looking at those percentages would be for eligible costs. So this typically includes the designing, engineering, equipment, hardware, installation. You've got meters and data loggers, on-site renewable systems. So that could be photovoltaic or battery electric charging or battery systems. And then you've got taxes and freight and other fees. And there could be other eligible costs on a case-by-case basis. And then go ahead and next slide. Great. And this would be the information you could contact us at. We are available. Best way would be by email at grants@valleyair.org. You can also call us at our phone department line there at 230-5800, area code 559. And you can also sign up for an email listserv if you want additional information. And that's the conclusion of our presentation. I'll be happy to take questions after the end.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Okay, the last Air District person we're bringing to the stage here is Melinda Barbecco. She's a strategic incentives from the Strategic Incentives Division at the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, and she's going to talk about a pending funding opportunity within the district. Take it away, Minda.
Thank you so much. My name is Minda Berbecco. I'm a manager at the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, and I oversee our on-road program, which includes medium and heavy-duty trucks. I'm going to share information regarding a solicitation opportunity we're opening this summer, and we just received board approval for this program this morning. So anywhere on the slides where that you see potential, you can just switch in your head to official. The opening date is going to be this Monday. And it is limited to areas within our air district, which is the 9 counties of the Bay Area. You can go ahead and switch slides. Thank you. So the air district was established here in the Bay Area in the 1950s to improve public health and the global climate and air quality. And you can see we cover the 9 Bay Area counties. Next slide, please. We're planning to open a solicitation this summer, like I said, on Monday, to fund permanent new or expansion of electric charging infrastructure that will spur the deployment of zero-emission vehicles and equipment here in the Bay Area. The goal is to have these chargers in place by early 2027. Next slide, please. This is going to be a competitive solicitation with $35 million available for public and private applicants. And like the other air districts, we also will be following the Chapter 10 guidelines of the Crowell-Moyer guidelines. Next slide, please. So I oversee our on-road vehicle program, but this solicitation actually includes other categories as well. Including infrastructure that would support marine locomotives, as well as off-road equipment too. Next slide, please. So this is what eligible funding would look like, or will look like under this funding opportunity. The prioritization is really for disadvantaged communities, and there's higher percentage funding available for those communities as well as for public school districts. All of this will be available on our website starting on Monday. But to give you an idea, for a typical infrastructure project, we can fund up to 50%, but again, if it's in a disadvantaged community, near sensitive receptors such as a hospital or a nursery school, or if it's funded by solar or wind, these are all things that would bring the amount up that we could offer. Next slide, please. So here are the eligible costs we're considering. The big takeaway here is that if it's funding directly related to the infrastructure equipment or construction from the meter on, it's something that we would fund, but not before the meter. So that includes things like taxes and shipping and delivery costs, but of course also the equipment and design and engineering of the project. Next slide, please. So our selection criteria for this solicitation is going to be based on a basic checklist. Either the project has these things or it doesn't. So the first is there a need? So for example, is there evidence that there's been a purchase order for the vehicles, or there's a plan to have a purchase order for the vehicles, or vehicles are already there? That would be a need that qualifies. How ready is this project is the next criteria. And we have a list that will include in the solicitation, but includes things like, where are you in your permit process? Do you already have electricity going to the site? Those kinds of things. The next is the potential impact of the grant, which is the amount requested divided by the kilowatts available for charging at that site. And then if there is a need for a tiebreaker, this would be proximity to sensitive receptors, which I mentioned earlier, things like hospitals, parks, those kinds of things. And at least 80% of the funds will be awarded to projects that support vehicles or equipment that operate in priority areas. And these are disadvantaged low-income communities or AB 617 communities. Next slide, please. So to find out more, please sign up for our email list on our website. But now the board has approved the program, and more information will be available on this page starting on Monday. And I've also included the email for our grants team and my email as well if people want to reach out.
Oh, thank you so much, Minda. That's really great news and really good timing. So we've got one more presentation, and this is we're going to be hearing from Leela Rao, who is the Air Quality Officer at the Port of Long Beach, and Jacob Goldberg, Grant Supervisor at the Port of Los Angeles. So I'm going to turn the mic over to these two.
Thanks, Leslie. So as mentioned, I'm Leela Rao from the Port of Long Beach. I'm joined by Jacob Goldberg from the Port of LA. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So we're going to talk about some of the funding that we have available for infrastructure under our Clean Truck program. The Port's Clean Truck program, it's a joint program between our two ports that supports the transition of the drayage fleet to 100% zero emission operation by 2035. That's a goal that we have in our 2017 Clean Air Action Plan. To sort of help us achieve that goal, we have a Clean Truck Fund rate that was started in April of 2022. This is a fee essentially that's charged to the cargo owners, and it generates a fund to incentivize zero emission drayage truck purchases and infrastructure projects. So far, the ports have collected together approximately $156 million. And we have allocated approximately $113 million to different trucks and infrastructure projects so far. Some of these are pending future board approval, but we're getting pretty close. We do have spending plan priorities that are approved by each of our ports' Board of Harbor Commissioners. And these priorities include both zero emission truck incentives, charging and fueling infrastructure projects, and demonstration and pilot projects. So next slide. And I will throw it over to Jacob.
Thanks, Leela. And so just to talk, elaborate a bit on what Leela just said and talk about some of the more specific projects we've been moving forward for infrastructure funding, specifically from that Clean Truck Fund rate. First and foremost, each of us have issued RFPs, both Port of LA and Port of Long Beach, for development of charging and or fueling zero emission stations on port property. Each of those RFPs have closed and are moving towards contract on their own various paces. Port of Long Beach is intending to issue a second RFP in late June, early July of this year for an additional site to be developed with supporting funding coming from the Clean Truck Fund as well in its own structures. Beyond that, both ports are currently working towards one of those pending projects Leela mentioned, partnership with the Mobile Source Air Pollution Reduction Review Committee, or MSRC, in the region. The MSRC has their own independent funding for publicly accessible zero emissions infrastructure for heavy duty trucks. They issued an RFI for information on those projects in late 2022, and kind of building from that, there were additional projects that could support funding that would bring support for drayage trucks in our area. So the ports are each going to their boards for a agreement to provide funding towards specific projects from that RFI process. Looking at roughly 28 million in funding from the ports in total under that particular partnership. That was actually scheduled to go to the Port of LA board tomorrow. It's been moved back a couple weeks to the next meeting in June to accommodate a couple of last minute changes, but hopefully to obtain approval of those projects shortly. Earlier in the Clean Truck Fund cycle, the Port of LA issued an RFP for fleets of 10 or more zero emissions trucks and supporting infrastructure under an RFP. We issued 2 projects awards for $3 million each, both of which are moving towards full deployment of those trucks and funding accordingly. So that's just a brief summary of all the various things we've done under this element. Looking forward, we're considering expanding that partnership with the MSRC for more public funding sites, issuing potentially additional RFPs for either in the same vein of what the Port of LA did a couple of years ago for fleets of 10 or more, something like that, or potentially other structures, and then other partnerships as they come forward to support drayage, charging, and fueling infrastructure in the area. referencing some of the upcoming larger grant opportunities, such as the South Coast Air Quality Management District's application to EPA's climate pollution reduction program grants, where there's likely to be a large drayage component of that element that we're hoping to collaborate and support. Also mentioned earlier the CFI potential application from CAC and Caltrans. The ports are looking forward to supporting that and other similar issues, opportunities as well. Next slide. Just contact information for more on that. We maintain a couple of other potential pathways for funding as well. So more information, feel free to reach out to either of us. I think there's a thank you slide, but other than that, back to you, Leslie.
All right, thank you so much, Jacob. So go to the next slide, and 2 more slides, Isaac. This, you guys have heard a lot. Like, I'm kind of overwhelmed on all of the various funding opportunities and financing assistance that's out there and resources that are out there. And I didn't want to leave the utilities off the table because, so on this slide, again, we will be posting all of these slides with all of these active links on our page. We have actually talked about a lot of the utility transportation electrification support programs plus their funding programs at a prior at the prior work group meeting for the TRIG. So you don't really have time to go into detail here, but I just want to let you know that that's what we have, that we have talked about it. In the interest of time, I would kind of like to just continue and plow through this meeting unless someone has an urgent need for maybe a 3-minute bio break. Hearing none, go to the next slide. This is where we're just going to probably stop doing screen sharing. No, just keep it on questions. We're not ready for discussion topics. I will discontinue screen sharing because what we want to do right now is open to clarifying questions that relate to anything you just heard with each one of these funding programs. I've asked everybody everybody who's given a presentation to stick around so they can answer questions that you might have about any one of these programs. So so if Isaac, you can discontinue the screen share so I can see everybody's hands up. And I do see some folks with their hands up. So just want to make sure that we have everybody who gave presentations. We want to make sure you're still here. Frank, you had your hand up first, so I'm going to let you ask away. Oh, no. Yes, Frank, yes.
That's great. Thank you very much, Leslie. And thank you to the presenters for joining us today and showing us what programs you're offering. I think this can be very interesting and exciting for many fleets. I have 2 questions. The first one is they're both about the eligibility. One is, are public agencies eligible for various funding? While I do represent publicly owned electric utilities, I also represent public water agencies that are also subject to the Advanced Clean Fleets rule. I can ask my second one now.
How about I'm going to help you out here? I've been always operating on the assumption that public agencies are always eligible for this funding, but maybe if any of you that gave a presentation can chime in and correct me otherwise about your specific program or give me a nod if public agencies are. Yep, thumbs up.
That's awesome.
Beautiful.
That's
okay, next question, Frank.
Periodically, and this varies, and it's very unique to each application, but periodically large electric customers that are prompting a change in distribution projects, say a new substation or something like this, may be responsible for some of the behind the meter costs, meaning on the utility side of the meter. I saw that, for example, the Bay Area Quality funding, they explicitly stated does not cover behind the meter. I'm curious about some of the others. Thank you again for the opportunity to ask these questions.
So yeah, with any of these programs, can we have a response to that? If anybody offers utility side of the meter costs? Because I'm not aware of that myself.
I can chime in a little bit, Leslie, if helpful.
Yeah, go ahead,
So
Jesse, and then Dan.
Energize is stackable with charge ready transport. So if you are eligible for charge ready transport, that would be maybe a creative way to get both sides funded, but Energize will not directly fund the utility side.
That makes sense. Thank you. Dan?
Yeah. We have the ability to provide loan and credit support for that part of the infrastructure equation, but it would need to be repaid. So whose book that sits on, the relationship between the project host and the utility would need to be clarified. But on paper, we could support it, not with a grant, but with a loan.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, that's helpful. These are costs that the customer would have to pay the utility. And but that's very helpful. Thank you.
Damon, you had your hand up next.
Thank you, Leslie. So this question is perhaps for the Air District folks. I noticed that the programs you all spoke about were specific to your region or your area. And I was just curious if you know at all whether the funding mechanisms that are based on the Carl Moyer program would be applicable to, say, a Calaveras County Air District or other local air districts for some of the other counties.
This is Jeff from Valley Air. I can't speak to what programs that they would have and what they would be offering, but if they are following the same state guidelines under the Carl Moyer program, then they should be very similar to what we would be offering.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay, Lisa? Lisa McGee, Tom's Truck Center.
Hey, I'm here. Thank you, Leslie. So I had a couple of comments as it relates to the public charging definition. Energize does a really good job of coming up with a newly identified definition that really supports medium heavy duty. I think we all can, I don't need to kind of go back on why or kind of explain that, but I think we all understand that medium heavy duty have a much different footprint, a much different need in terms of access, ingress, egress. And so the goal here is that we need these regulatory definitions to support medium heavy duty. We know we're late to the game in supporting programs and infrastructure and stations for medium heavy duty. So I just want to kind of call that out there. Also on the DAC side, the federal tax definition for the 30C allows requires a disadvantaged community to opt into that. And I have some comments on that we all need to kind of start making sure that we're identifying that many of commercial sites are located in industrial areas. We're located in an industrial area, but right across the street, it's a disadvantage, but we're not in that disadvantage because we're surrounded by a bunch of.
I'm wondering if I could interrupt you for just a second. After we ask the clarifying questions about the programs, we're going to get into a little bit more detail about how we can maybe improve the structure of the programs. So maybe this is a better to be brought up after this section.
Okay, all right, good enough.
Perfect, thank you. Matt, you had a question in the chat. Damon, did you get your question answered already? Sorry, I'm looking at in the order.
I did, yes, thanks.
Okay, yeah, so Matt, you had a question in the Q&A, but yeah, feel free to ask it here.
I think I had a comment in Q&A, but anyway, I do have a question about programs in general, incentive funding program for infrastructure. And the question has to do with the fact that in this charging infrastructure world, there's kind of two categories of infrastructure. There's charging hardware that does not have internal radios or internal meters. People like to call them dumb chargers. You just plug them in and they charge. They always work. And then there's this other category of charging that has cellular radios, Wi-Fi radios, Cat 5, Cat 6 connections, and and they connect to a network. The difference in cost between them could be substantial. Non-network charging units can cost like maybe 20% of network charging. Behind a fence, behind a depot or a yard fence, there's really no compelling operational reason necessarily to have network charging. But oftentimes what it appears is that the incentive programs don't cover that. Is that true? Or what can anyone out there who's responsible for funding programs tell us about what funding might be available for dumb charging?
Anyone?
And I'm sorry, that was a convoluted way to ask the question, but was the question clear?
Yeah, I think I know where you're going. Yeah, I'm
Who has money? Who has money for non-network charging?
Tessie, is that in your shop for answer?
Well, I can answer the why it's not, but I'm pretty sure that we already know that. So we need the chargers networked because we have to provide data back to the CEC in terms of reporting, and this is true for a majority of the funding programs. It's difficult to for the CEC, it's difficult to have a charger in the ground that is not wired. So I understand where you're coming from. When I initially started as a project manager, we put a bunch of Clipper Creeks in the ground, right? 19.2 kilowatt dumb chargers. You can get hardware that helps to network them, but those are not part of newer programs that require the OCPP requirements, that require the full security, that require the reporting detail that's needed to go back. So that's not a direct answer, and I apologize, but that's kind of the mechanism or the reasoning why.
Yeah, so if I may just quickly highlight something that I just want us to be sensitive to when we're talking about incentive funding, and that is AB 126 concerns reliability around networked equipment. This is something that I'm hearing from our fleet customers that's a concern. And also networked equipment comes with fees in perpetuity that do not come with non-network. So I just want to throw that out there, and just so that we all know that that's a challenge that we have to find a way to overcome.
Got it. And maybe that's something we can ponder a little bit during the second part of this meeting. Gosh, I want to keep moving here. Dan, did you have
Yeah, just a comment that we could loan to a project that was not networked, but we would not obviate the need represented by other, say, grant-based incentives in the same project. So you might still have that same problem if you're taking grants in addition to loans.
Understood. Thank you for that.
Okay, I'm thinking we might want to just move on to the next section. I brought that up to Lisa as well. And then maybe if Isaac, you can start your screen share again and show the list of, it's going to be slide 77, list of discussion topics. We put these together with some feedback from everybody. And the question list started growing, and I'm not necessarily married to attacking these questions in any particular order, but I do want to be able to use the next, say, maybe 30 minutes to, everyone on the screen, everyone in the audience, look over these questions. And so what we're looking for are just ways either to improve the programs to better meet the needs of the fleet customers, whether that is administering them more efficiently. Are there changes that might help, with the eligibility requirements that could help one of those programs be better serve the needs of the community that's trying to go after the funding? So funding alignment. So that's sort of like the gist of what we're trying to get at with these discussion topics. And I know that Lisa had her hand up, and I think she still has her hand up. I'm going to let you digest this a little bit and let me know, what you think. If you have some questions or suggestions for improvement, Lisa. Lisa McGee. And just before she gets on, this is also using the Q&A feature for the folks in the audience, if you could do your very best to articulate your question or your idea, so that we can then propose it to our panelists or pose it to the group for this group discussion. That would be most appreciated, because we really don't want to leave you out of the discussion, but we definitely want to, you know, hear what you have to say, but just be as clear as possible so that we're able to relay that. Okay, while we're waiting for Lisa, Minda, did you have anything? I see your hand up.
Yeah, I was actually going to respond to Lisa's comment about the location of DACs and whether or not a project was in there, and if she's able to unmute, maybe she wants to go a little further into it. But something that we do for our solicitation, and I feel like I heard it maybe in one of the other ones as well, is that yes, we do have a priority of funding in DACs and low-income communities as well. But we look at it in two different ways. First of all, specifically location within that area. Second is within a half mile. We still consider that because of the reason that she stated. Sometimes you're like directly next to it. And then the third is if you're traveling through those areas. So if you are charging vehicles that are going to be operating within those areas, then we also look at that as well, and we would prioritize those projects too. And I feel like I heard at least one other presentation today that looks at it similarly. So I wonder if that might address some of the concern about the specific location and whether it would qualify.
Anyone?
Robert Sauls here. The CalCap program, the new program we have coming up with Southern California Edison specifically is addressing DAC concerns, in that the business needs to be located or operating in these disadvantaged communities. I don't know if, but again, there's the requirement they need to be a Southern California Edison account holder. So it's a pretty targeted area.
Okay, Lisa, I see you got your hand up still, and you're unmuted, and
I finally got unmuted, right? So yeah, I think to kind of go to your discussion topics and try to tie it into where I'm going with some of this is I'd like to know if in any of these programs, if anybody can answer the question, interoperability testing is something that's not really been tapped into on the medium heavy duty side, right? There's a lot of assumptions that's been made because we've been out there on the light duty side and maybe more like Group 1 trucks. So as the heavy duty side shapes and merges into this market, I think we need to have a program that includes with the OEMs and the truck OEMs with the charging OEMs to have a seamless process for interoperability testing. And I don't know what the answer is, but I'd like for someone to kind of share if they thought through that, because I think that's going to be a pain point. We're not going to have reliability on that side. And then on, I want to, Matt address, I thought, Matt, you did a great job of identifying another pain point when you bring up the points of what are the pain points. When we look at DC and we go to higher voltage charging, I want to know if we have a solution. Also, what Matt had kind of brought up, we're looking at $500 to $1,000 per month per charger. I would love to know how a small fleet with less utilization gets to have the same inclusiveness as others do in terms of their price per mile, because all of this gets packaged into a different issue for 85% of the population for medium heavy duty registered vehicles. And I'll just leave it there to see if someone's got some, because I'm really concerned about having, also one last point is how we make on some of the interoperability and the networking that Matt had brought up is how do we create insurances so we don't have a stranded asset that's been paid for by a program, that when we're still in a vertical market and some OEMs coming and going, how do we make sure that connectivity doesn't turn us off? And I'll leave it there.
I think those are really great things for us to ponder at another session, but I really appreciate that input. I wrote it down. I took good notes. Matt.
Yeah, sorry, Lisa's making a really good point. It's totally distracting me from my question. And I think it is best left for another session because there's a lot of important detail to cover here that we can't do in a short period of time. But you know, we're aware of AB 126 and reliability concerns for public charging. These issues, like Lisa's bringing up, they do exist in the heavy duty space. Hence my question earlier about dumb charging. It just works. It just always works. And these fees in perpetuity, they are a big challenge. They add to the fundamental economics, and when you do the math, it creates situations oftentimes where the fuel costs are actually higher for electric than they are for liquid fuels. But anyway, put that aside, and I'll just tell you what my question / suggestion is for making all of this work better. There's so many different funding programs, and some of them overlap. A lot of them overlap. At the high level of CPUC, right? Utility programs, CEC, CARB, and AQMD, and I think we covered a lot of that today. Cal Fleet Advisor, that's excellent. Cal Start's Funding Finder is also excellent in the same regard, in that it helps people, fleet owners, try to find out, like, of all these different confusing programs, what's available to me. However, and I don't have experience with Cal Fleet Advisor yet, but I will say that what would really be helpful, I think, and I'd love for somebody to step in and contradict what I'm about to say, is an online tool where a fleet owner can go in and click some boxes that basically, each of those boxes represent my fleet, you know, size, DAC or not. Will employees be using my charging as well as my fleet or not? You know, things like this that represent my situation. My zip code, and then click submit, and a list comes back and says, well, these are the programs that appear that you could be eligible for. And then a subsequent step that then carries that fleet owner through two things. One is confirmation that yes, in fact, this does fit your scenario. And two, walks you into the steps that are required to go and seek that funding. That would be a tremendous help. I'm sure Cal Fleet Advisor, based on what I'm told, is essentially trying to do that in a manual sort of live human-to-human interaction way. But what I'm suggesting is a complement to that, and that is an online tool for doing that.
Okay, I'm sure we have folks on the call that are, Brian is on the call from Cal Fleet Advisor. I think maybe, can you take that home? Take that back to your shop and see how you might be able to work with that or work on that suggestion. I really feel like what you're asking for is definitely it seems like it'd be really, really super useful for fleets. At the same time, I could see how it's going to be a big task to develop something like this and keep it current. But I definitely agree with you there. So we're definitely taking that back. Any more you know, for folks to consider. Do we have, I still Lisa, see your hand up, Lisa, but I was wondering if we had any questions that have come in from the Q&A from our audience that we could entertain for this. If there's anybody else is, you know, thinking about any of these other ways to improve programs.
I just make one more comment about Lisa's comment and interoperability technical challenges.
Sure.
So as far as opportunities for improvement, some creative technical people, it would be helpful if they could get together and figure out how to get the program administrators the data they need while minimizing or even eliminating these fees in perpetuity that Lisa had mentioned, you know, 500 to 1,000 a month per charging unit. Those kinds of fees have real economic meaning when you're doing your numbers. over time. And if those fees can be eliminated by somehow also getting the program administrator the data, we could really accelerate these infrastructure deployments.
Anybody else want to comment on that? I know that with the Energize program, as Tessie mentioned, it's very much about data collection. And hence, why that response to the dumb versus smart chargers. I get it. But I do think that's something really important to take home and consider to see what might we be able to do. Frank, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it took me a minute to get to the right screen to turn my mute off. And Matt, I actually just sent you an email on what I'm about to say. For what it's worth, CMUA submitted comments to the Energy Commission suggesting that for behind the fence, non-networked, essentially private charging, that the CEC should not mandate collecting uptime data and stuff of this nature. That essentially these should count for the inventory that the CEC processes. But essentially what Matt was saying, that this is a real problem and could put a chill on these installations. We did not get into, and I'd be willing to talk further about how we might be able to do this. We did not, in our comments to the Energy Commission, did not get into questions about alternative means of collecting the data that the CEC asked for. And if that would be helpful, I'd be more than happy to get engaged on that.
So we do have somebody from the Energy Commission who's a co-chair for our panel at this point. And so, Mark, are you comfortable responding to that? Mark Perry?
And we just submitted our comments last week, okay. So it may not have gotten to human eyes yet.
Oh yeah, certainly. And just like every government agency, CEC can be a little siloed as well. So Mark.
Well, everybody's very busy. I don't want to make it very busy.
Anyway,
No, to answer your question, I'm sorry, this is Mark Perry. It took me a little
Mark.
while to get unloaded or to get unmuted. No, I'm sorry, I'm not comfortable answering that at this time.
Is this, yeah, but I gather this is just something, because the purpose of this work group meeting is to just sort of take people's input and just see how might we be able to improve programs. But I thank you, Matt, for introducing those comments, submitting it to the docket, right? And so for consideration, yeah.
Leslie, you also have some questions in the Q&A.
Yeah, I noticed that. I was gonna bring one of those up. And sometimes it's hard to try to figure out what the question is. So that's what I was asking. I think this one, I'm looking at this one from Pave Power, and it says a third party non-owner of a facility or the BEVs or anything. They're acting on behalf of the owner to consult, design, build, operate the EVSE. And they're wondering if they can be permitted to begin a funding application on behalf of their customers and then bring those customers into the process. So I guess this is a question for anybody who's organizes these funding programs.
Hi, this is Jeff Writing at the Valley Air District. It doesn't appear like that would be something that would be eligible under our grant program. Most of the projects, they have to follow a set of guidelines within the Carl Moyer program, Chapter 10 infrastructure, and that would essentially be work that would be funded, or that would be completed prior to funding an agreement with the applicant. And so anything prior to a contract execution would not be eligible for reimbursement funding. So
Yeah, that makes sense, and that's pretty common with a lot of programs. You have to get granted approval for funding first. I think what they're asking is, can they act on the behalf of the fleet or the property owner, or does it to begin the funding application? Not necessarily pay in advance. Are there other programs like?
I've never seen that happen, and I can't say for certain that it would be ineligible outright. Maybe if you wanted to direct a specific scenario to us in an email, we could look at it further. But it doesn't seem typical of what we would have in a grant program.
Yeah, and I do see some questions here that are directed specifically to Minda from the Bay Area and Tom from the Bay Area, basically asking about funding for movable infrastructure, and funding for solar charging to be installed, but it's not yet been built. Does it have to be ready to go ahead? I've been trying to parse out exactly what these questions are. But I'm going to ask that person who submitted them maybe to go directly to Tom and Minda with those questions, because they are specific to the Air District's funding programs. And I'm thinking similarly with Air District. I'm going to circle back to the bigger question about having somebody request funding on your behalf. Is that allowable in Energize? Tessie?
Yes, so you may apply on behalf of an applicant. So this example would be like a consultant, for example. So you may apply on behalf of an applicant, or you may also be an installation partner. The key walkaway that we want to remember as we think about applying on behalf of somebody is that the TIN, right, the IRS issued TIN that incurs the cost is the recipient. So we need to make sure that whatever costs are incurred can be proven to match back to that TIN. So you may apply on behalf of a recipient, but you just keep in mind that whoever incurs the cost is the recipient. So we need to make sure those things all align.
Yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. I appreciate that. What about, I think a lot of the presentations in here talk about technology that's already available, that you're already UL certified, that you're already on a list somewhere, that you know, you're using equipment and whatnot that are you know, basically approved. Are there any of these funding programs that we're talking about offer money to maybe new technologies, maybe new entrants into the market, you know, that might not already be on the list? Or is that, or if they are trying to get on a list, what might they do to be eligible for funding within your programs? I know we heard presentations from the air districts. Basically, they use Moyer guidelines, and they definitely have pre-approvals on their equipment. I'm pretty sure it's the same with Energize, but I'm just kind of searching out there to see if there's anything, you know, for something
Leslie,
that might not be. Yeah, go ahead.
Leslie, what do you mean exactly by non-approved?
Well, so if you look at your list of eligible equipment, that's kind of what I've been talking about. There's typically a, you know, certain certifications required for that.
So yeah, I'm still not grasping. So because I know somebody earlier had asked through the online chat,
yeah,
think about equipment that is not permanently installed. I think I heard that.
There's that as well.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Maybe
Okay,
if you can look at the chat and see if you can.
Yeah, no, I think I touched
look
on
into
that
the
in my.
Q&A and just see if you can have
Well, let
it.
me just touch on that real quick. I mean, I think I mentioned that in my presentation that, yeah, the Carl Moyer staff has, you know, Air Districts has kind of pushed that some of these non-permanent is needed, right? Because we funded trucks and they're here. Carl Moyer program funded trucks, they're here, and yet they cannot get the infrastructure up yet. So they realize that they need to run their trucks. They don't fund our program, get emission reduction. So they are now allowing, right now it's still through a case-by-case process, some of these low pollution type of semi-permanent infrastructure can be considered. And then they're going to the board and this year to modify the Chapter 10 guidelines. And they're supposed to make it even easier that some of these may not even need a case by case. It's up to their district discretion that what I mentioned earlier, like a methanol fuel cell, use that to power up a charger. That can be deployed in 6 months. We're actually funding one of those right now in the process. Linear generators that have very, very low emission, just basically you have a natural gas line, you can have that. And that can be up and running in about 6 to 9 months. And something like that, we can fund right now through case by case. So I think if that's what you're talking about, yeah, they are fundable.
Okay.
So
yeah, not necessarily, but yeah, I do appreciate you putting an emphasis on that, because that is really new with these programs, is these temporary solutions. And then there's another question in the chat that's coming in about what about data collection, data track. I think there's a lot of equipment that at least in Tessie's slide, she brought up that the software part of it. I think there's a lot of eligibility for the different software associated with projects. Those are going to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis when someone submits a project application to the Energize program. I'm pretty sure it's going to be the same way with other programs. So I feel like I'm running through these questions pretty well. We've got 15 minutes left. Do we have any more questions from our panelists?
I have a question. The low carbon fuel standard, can CARB share the new proposals? They seem to elaborate that they were pretty substantial in terms of changes. So I'm assuming that the kilowatt hours per credit has dynamically changed. If that's the case, can you share? I know we've been swimming around 700, 780 for the medium heavy duty and more like 1200 for the light duty. So is that where the change is on average? Or what is it?
Lisa, I don't know offhand. We don't set that exact metric for it, but I think the main change is you just have infrastructure that's a lot bigger, right? Much larger cities that would be available.
Okay, got it. All right. And then the only other thing I had is that you tapped onto the temporary charging solutions. I would love to see us. I know that CEC is coming right now with a pilot for temporary, that they're going to be piloting with CARB's permission. I think that's a critical element on how we continue to get the first phase deployment out. I'd love to see us kind of all go back to the drawing board on how, for the medium heavy duty, we need to find ways to shape the program to support them, because we don't have infrastructure out there for them yet, as it relates to places that they could actually go charge publicly if they don't have it. And can we support hubs by large fleets and even through dealerships through some mechanism to be incentivized or being given an opportunity to manage this for the, I don't know what the answer is, but I just know that the people that touch the customers, like the large fleets that have local areas that could share a hub potentially, and then dealerships that touch the customers, I just think there's a mechanism there that could better support all the fleets that are lost and dealerships that are lost in this conversation on how all these funding programs, which seriously could bring a great solution to the table, even Cal KAP's lending program, dealerships are left out of this discussion, and we need more support.
For sure. You do represent a dealer, Lisa, but we do it, and we really appreciate your perspective on these. So we have about 11 minutes left, and I want to have an opportunity. So Mark, did you have, Jimmy, Mark? Yeah. And then we're going to move on to our next steps here. How about you, Jimmy?
Yeah, Jimmy at Caltrans. I was going to respond to Matt's question in the chat, which I think is a really good one about displaying prices and consistency. The federal requirements for chargers funded in their National Vehicle Infrastructure Program have a requirement that the price is displayed to the customer before they initiate the charge. And the price of charging can't change during the charging session, which is the latter is actually an interesting case. If you're charging in the middle of the day and you cross the threshold between 3 p.m. And it goes from 2:59 to 3 p.m. And the electricity rate changes. The federal guidelines say the price can't change during that charging session, which is a really interesting situation that, it might need some revisions. That you have to tell the customer that the price will change at this time or something. But I think we have that requirement at the federal level. There's several ways that a company could comply with displaying that information. And we have, of course, these time of use policies where the pricing is changing, and we think that's a good thing to minimize grid impacts. But we do need to communicate those clearly, that somebody knows that the price of electricity is more expensive between 3 and 9 p.m. and that we just all know that across, we don't use electricity during those hours. But I think it's a really great question. The other, I guess, first part of your question is the actual cost. The federal requirements also say that the cost per kilowatt hour has to be related to the cost of electricity. A very broad statement that we think would all be kind of a natural relationship to the cost. But essentially it implies that you can't be just charge willy-nilly for the cost to charge. All that said, I think you raised a great question that I think as the industry develops is going to mature itself as well.
Yeah, that's a really interesting topic when it just comes into just the cost of doing business that we might want to consider later. I didn't realize that the federal government had that requirement, and then thinking about how the utilities charge for use of electricity with time of use rates. Yeah, that's a tough one. But thanks for bringing that up.
May I quickly comment?
Yeah.
So I worked for a California utility for about 13 years. I don't work there anymore. It's been a while, but what I do know is tariffs, whether they're commercial, industrial, or residential, they're all over the map. Demand charges, no demand charges, TOU, flat rates. There's a huge amount of variability in the rates. Then from the point of view of the charging facility owner, the receipt of oftentimes incentive funding from programs like we're talking about today, they have their own situation, which includes the utility rate, and then they have to add something on top so that they can cover their costs, right? Maybe even some profit. When we do this, and we don't have market mechanisms that exist, fundamental market mechanisms that exist in liquid fuel industry like OPEC and refinery capacity and all this other stuff. We don't have any of that in this place. Where we've ended up is we've ended up in the electricity. I'll leave hydrogen out for a second. Where we've ended up in the electricity charging space is massive variability, which is accompanied by massive uncertainty on the part of the fleet operator, the benefactor we're talking about today, about what is the fuel going to cost. Not necessarily on their depot, but when we're talking about any charging that will be accessible to other fleets, not just to one private fleet, that's an issue. Right. And I think all I want to do is just assert that for all these funding programs and for the topic that we're covering today, we somehow we're going to have to resolve this at some point. It may not be today in the program rules and funding requirements for particular funding programs, but at some point this is going to come back to bite us. We have to fix this.
Thank you, Matt. Way to close it. And I really do appreciate that input. Let's go to the next slide. Because we kind of want to wrap it up. Next step. So what I have put here is recap on action items. I think we have some really good input that has come in here. We've taken some pretty good notes. I'm not sure I'm prepared to recap on that right now. I don't know if any of our co-chairs are, but I feel like some key areas for discussion are coming into play, you know, smart versus dumb chargers, having a one-stop shop place for a fleet to go to be able to navigate what type of funding program might work for them, what might be available to them. And I think I almost want to circle back with you, Matt, and possibly the CalSTART team on looking into something like this.
Please.
Yeah. So next meeting, it'll be in August. I'll be doing the same thing I do every time with our group, sending out, you know, looking for dates for the next meeting. But for right now, what I'd like to, I put up this table. This was the results from our first infrastructure trig meeting where we were trying to highlight our priorities. And where the top three were the cost were, you know, pace and timing of infrastructure deployment, cost concerns, and grid issues. We could keep talking about cost concerns. We could keep talking about grid. I have wanted to dive a little bit more into that pace and timing subject because, you know, and that's kind of tends to be more of a hardware kind of an issue and a hardware availability like switchgear and transformers and stuff. So anyway, this was a chart from that we produced from our meeting of where everybody felt that the top highest priorities were. And the next slide, what I have is a little bit more of a breakdown of what fed into the top three. So these so this was just part of that whole brainstorm that when we had our first meeting of the different key concerns that were pulled out from that discussion and put into Annalisa with all of her wisdom put this into a nice little list of things. And so from here, I am not sure what I want to do for the third meeting, but I'm soliciting your input. You can certainly either circle back with me at a later date after you've had a chance to think about this a little bit more. We'll be meeting back with our co-chairs to talk about this. I don't know if Adam is still on the call. I remember him telling me that he had to go pick up a kid. And he might not be able to. Oh, you're still here. See, I stole the show for you, Adam. You want to chime in?
I found a neighbor who could pick up my daughter.
Thank you.
Thank you, community.
Yes.
And I would just also say we don't necessarily have to limit to the priorities laid out here, but want something of a meaty enough subject that would allow us to dive into for the for the 2 hours of these workshops. But if there's something in here that lends itself to something that you think that we should dive in further to bring together, as we have been doing, a cohort of agency officials to present data as well as answer questions, please make that suggestion.
Yeah.
I will say I really appreciated this conversation around the cost of connectivity. I think that's definitely something that we can think about if there's a better statewide solution for that.
Okay, with that, I think we're going to be wrapping up. Annalise, did you have anything else you wanted to share, or Mark?
Nope, it's been a really great conversation. Look forward to deciding what we're going to tackle next.
Yeah. So you all have my email. You know how to reach me. Definitely would want to take your input into the subject for the next meeting. So have time to just take some time to ponder this. Timing for posting. We've been pretty quick about getting the video posted on the meetings and events calendar. It's going to be all in that same block where everything else is posted on the meetings and events calendar for this specific meeting. We will also be posting, like I said before, this entire slide deck with active links and then also meeting notes. And so that's probably maybe 2 weeks away. So I hope, and then at the same time in the Q&A, my team has done a great job of posting those links into the chat or Q&A feature so that those were readily available to folks to look at as we go along. So with that, I think we're going to end the meeting. Thank you so much, everybody, for spending the last 2 hours with us. I feel like it was super productive, and really plan on working with our partner agencies and our folks, our friends over at CalSTART on the Energize program and the Cal Fleet Advisor program and those other programs to see how can we do a better job at making this process easier for folks to access these funds. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.